Righto, buddy miners. Hope you all had a good weekend. I had a good weekend knowing that I'm bloody best mates with Axis Mine and Technology. Mate, tell you what, call them in the show notes. There's always someone on the other end of the phone that knows what they're talking about drill hole survey instrumentation.
Always.
It is a free try. Mate, if you want it, try before you buy. Just drop the Money of Mine name and they'll give you a free trial of the gyro or the Ori.
You know they'll pick up.
Beautiful. Boys, diggers next week.
I'm excited. I've got a few announcements to make about.
I'm going to announce I'm going to behave myself better than last year.
We all look forward to that one.
Expecting a couple of best on ground performances, Matty. Come on.
couple of announcements to make. We're going to Diggers. So if you're holding an event at Diggers and Dealers in Kalgoorlie, make sure you invite the good guys at Money of Mine and gals, Ali too. The four of us are all going
For free.
Like,
Just want free shit.
If you don't, if you're doing something and you don't invite us, it's probably a bad event. Number two, we're not going to do content at Diggers this year, so don't message us thinking that you're going to get some exposure by coming on the podcast at Diggers, because it's not going to happen because it was too hard last time.
And I nearly ruined the whole business. Yeah.
Getting just a morning email out might be hard enough this year at Diggers, so we'll see how we go.
The morning email, Jesus Christ, it's holy snap and dapper shit. She's flying, Trav.
It's flying. It's taken off, mate.
Yeah.
If you don't know, everyone that they sign up to the morning email, the director special, and as you sign up for it, you sequentially get allocated a new GC number, a higher one. It goes up by one every time, right? And that number keeps climbing. I checked it this morning, and the last person to sign up to our email newsletter got GC number 9,438.
Ooh.
Now, I'm going to say, you might want to make sure that you're one of the top 10,000 GCs, because being a top 10,000 GC may or may not give you special privileges as we grow out the Money of Mine offering to all of the GCs out there. So
I'm sensing future discounts,
mate, there could be just special privileges of some description. Like maybe we invite you to things, maybe we give you, exclusive content. I don't know, mate, but you better make sure you're a top 10,000 GC, otherwise
you'll never know.
You'll never know. We might have something in mind, we might not. But if you're dragging your feet, pause the potty right now, go to moneyofmine.com, chuck in your email, click the confirmation email that goes into your inbox, and read our morning email. There's always a scoop in there, word on the decline every single day that you won't find or read anywhere else. That's all I got to say.
Righto. Now, this will maybe spark the ears of North American people, what we're about to talk about. When you talk about what is, you'd say, the best undeveloped uranium project in the world. People think
Arrow.
Next Gen, bloody Budanovskoy, other ones.
Honeymoon?
Honeymoon.
Undeveloped.
Producing. But the one that gets forgotten about and probably doesn't get much airtime because it's been given a lot of airtime over 2 decades or more is Jabiluka. And it's really heated up on Friday, and like a big hammer has been dropped by Big Albo, the Prime Minister of Australia. I'll play the video of what's happened.
When Yvonne Margarula, the senior traditional owner of Mirarr Country, wrote to me, she talked of the chance to finally be free of the threat of further uranium mining at Kakadu. Today I'm proud to announce that our government will be working with the traditional owners to make Jabiluka part of Kakadu National Park once and for all. This means there will never be mining at Jabiluka.
The Jabiluka debate has been a historic one. It's lasted decades. After the failure of the voice referendum, the policy announcement gives the opportunity for the government to demonstrate it's doing something for Indigenous people ahead of the Gama Festival next week. It will also be popular with Indigenous voters, in particular ahead of the Northern Territory election, and it's also aimed at boosting Labor's environmental credentials.
So, Big Albo is effectively pushing to have Jabiluka incorporated into the Kakadu National Park in the Northern Territory. Effectively, if that happens, it'll make it impossible to mine, nearly, pending a lot of variances. So I think we're going to go through a bit of a summary of what it is, the history, and all the players, the big player involved, and the little players making the noise.
Matty, you say 2 decades there. I think you could easily say 5.5 decades. This has been a hot rod for political debate since its discovery in the very early 1970s. So, I mean, why don't you run through a couple of the numbers quickly, and then we can fill in the backstory behind Jabiluka.
Yeah, well, this will give context of what it is. So, 300 million pounds of U3O8 contained at 0.55%.
Now,
Now,
that's at a 0.2. That's at a 0.2% cutoff grade. So, it could be a lot bigger than that.
Fucking lot bigger. Yeah. So, and like, look, 0.55. You think, oh, that's not bloody high. Next Gen and Cigar Lake and all that are bloody 15+%. But this is close to the surface. It would have likely been an underground to satisfy not disturbing the surface. But like 22 decade bloody mine life producing about probably 15 million pounds a year. Like you look at Paladin's open pit that they're doing's in the PPMs. Like, so this is 0.5%, which is 5,500 ppm, and they're like, what are they, 800 ppm, I think. So that it's just like for a shallow mine that is that big and there's that much of it, it is one of the best uranium deposits in the world. So, and there's actually a decline already at the ore that was developed in the early 2000s, but it's been backfilled. So that's the Jabiluka. Then you got the Ranger 3 as well. Ranger Deeps, sorry, as well. So
Ranger 3 Deeps, yeah.
Ranger 3 Deeps. So yeah, and that look, it's already, you've had the Ranger pits already been mined and rehabbed, being rehabbed, and JD, you're going to go into that whole backstory. Go, Cobber.
Yeah, let's give a bit of a rundown. So discovered in the early 70s, a group called Pan Continental. A couple of people might know them. They later owned Paddington, Kundana, a couple others. They got taken out in the 90s, but Jabiluka had sort of moved on by then. So like I said, quickly became the sort of centre of the anti-nuclear debate through the late 70s into the 80s. In 84, Australia came in with the very famous 3-mine policy. Now that sort of, in a way, ring-fenced the 3 existing operations in Ranger, which sits less than sort of 20 kilometres away, which now obviously both sit within ERA. Narbarlek, which is only 50-odd kilometres away, and of course Olympic Dam, owned by BHP, not predominantly mined for its uranium, but a byproduct there.
It is now.
Yeah, it is now. So in 1998, this sort of goes to what you were pointing out 20 years ago, became a real big point of contention, Matty. There was an 8-month-long blockade. Now, Yvonne Margarula, she was one of the leaders of this movement. She is one of the leaders of the Mirarr people, the local traditional owners there.
And I think she is the daughter of the previous Mirarr leader that sort of allowed Ranger to be first mined, I think, and then he's passed away and now she's the leader.
I think
that's right.
I think you're right. She is the father. I'm not sure about the intricacies in Ranger coming online, which I believe opened in either 1980 or 81. Yeah. But at this point in time, sort of 98 onwards, the project is owned by ERA, which is in itself majority owned by North Limited, which, Matty, you did a great rundown on, I think, when we were talking about Tanami, 3 or 4 months ago.
Oh, no, that was Normandy, wasn't it? Yeah, I think this was...
But did North get a mention in there, a fidge?
Maybe. I think it might have been in relation to North Parks.
Yep.
Yeah. So I know, because when Rio bought North Limited, that was primarily for the West Angeles, I think, right, like the Robe Valley iron ore assets. That was the big thing. That was what it was for. But they outbidded Anglo American for it. They were looking for it. So, but then with that acquisition came Rio's Canadian iron ore in Labrador, the Ranger Jabiluka mine, which we're talking about today, North Parks, and a few other things. But it was primarily for the iron ore, but these assets have stayed in the portfolio.
Yeah.
North Parks is out of it now.
It would have been a spicy one for the potty back in the day. So Rio came in at $3.80. Anglo were the white knight. They came in at $4.20. Yeah. And then Rio ended up coming in with a counter offer at $4.75, and Anglo couldn't match it.
Yeah.
So that takes us to about 2000. And then, like you say, Matty, in 2003, The decline, a 1.2 kilometre long decline, is backfilled. In 2005, a long-term care and maintenance agreement was signed. And then in 2011, as a bit of a side note, ERA approves a $120 million exploration decline for Ranger 3 deeps. Now, that's obviously sits close to Ranger.
Which is where the processing plan is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there was this, discussion in future that you could build, underground development all the way from Jabiluka. I'm not sure how close, as the crow flies, 15 odd kilometres or something.
So similar to a Woodsmith setup, like actually have the
Yeah.
Jabiluka underground and just a big decline going all the way to the processing plant.
So you don't have trucking and whatnot, and as minimal surface disturbance as possible. Again, that wasn't, put in stone or anything like that. That was just an idea that was floated and ultimately never became a mine either. So the ore, still sits there beneath the Ranger processing plant. And low uranium prices did play a factor in that as well. This is in the beginning part of the 2010s on the back of Fukushima and everything that sort of happened.
So it's a bit of a, it's like it was a bit of a godsend they didn't start mining Jabiluka, because imagine then when uranium absolutely shit itself post Fukushima, but it looks like it's never going to be possibly mined anyway. But it's, it would have been a bit of a waste of all that ore.
Yeah,
at that price.
I don't even think, even Jabiluka, as good a project as it would be, I don't think it would have been economic at $20 uranium, where things were at that time. So at $20 uranium?
$20 uranium for an underground?
I don't know.
It should be marginal. Oh, you might make a little bit, but but you got to you're hauling it. Say they're hauling it all the way underground, 20 Ks, like a lot of haulage. Yeah, should be tough going.
Yeah. We'll see. Maybe we can dig in a bit afterwards, but I'm sure economics played a role in the decision making, and it just wasn't front of mind for a Rio Tinto to progress while it just didn't stack up as much. So that kind of brings us to around about today, just to get there fully. In 2021, Ranger was depleted. In early January, they finished treating stockpiles there, and it ceases production. Since then, ERA have been working on rehabilitating the land. And it's just worth mentioning, as we tie off on the history, that the protests through the 70s, through the 90s and on to today have for a long time been sort of twofold, one on native title rights for the Mirarr people, as well as an anti-nuclear and anti-mining sentiment that was very front of mind in the 70s, 80s and 90s. But I think today the sentiment has somewhat changed, and the decision is on the basis of protecting the rights of the Mirarr people. It is not, it is not done solely on the basis of being an anti-nuclear movement. I think that's just a comment on the sentiment.
Oh yeah, I don't know about that, because just the timing as well from the Albanese side of things.
I guess the comment's more in relation to the broader sentiment in Australia. You're not seeing, like in the 70s, people marching down the streets of major cities protesting nuclear development. There's been a broader sentiment shift. Oh, most definitely. But it's just the timing of this announcement by Albo just after Dutton announces 7 nuclear plants and losing the voice referendum. It's whether it's a bit of political stuff going on as well. Political, no doubt. Yeah. So I mean, that brings us to the decision. So going back a couple months, March 20th, ERA lodged an application for the renewal of the Jabiluka lease. And in that, there's this interesting sort of wording that they, would be extending their arrangement with the Mirarr people, giving them a veto over development unless there's written consent. And there's a bit of a sort of thinly veiled threat in that the veto right only remains in place if the lease is renewed. And that's not with the government. That's the veto right between the Mirarr people and ERA, which is effectively Rio Tinto. That's right. Yeah. And then you get late Friday, the Northern Territory government coming out and saying, based on the advice from the federal government, they haven't renewed the lease. ERA on the back of this say they are obviously disappointed with the decision. The Northern Territory goes to the polls for a state election on August, and it was interesting to see that obviously the incumbent Labor government would sit in line with the federal government, but also the Liberal Party leader came out and said that any decision is a matter for the federal government. They aren't going to be fighting that one. And then you've also got the added aspect that they're going to try and add that site to the Kakadu National Park.
Yeah.
There's another part of, ERA and Jabiluka and everything that's kind of interesting too, and that's that for like the best part of since 2017, you've had it's been just this kind of really strange company that's had this listing on the ASX. They've had this, it seems to be this ever-growing rehab liability in relation to the range of rehab that keeps growing, even though they keep spending billions on it. They keep doing a series of incredibly dilutive entitlements offers in order to fund that rehab, where Rio Tinto kind of itches up its sort of ownership of this company over time, and the only kind of investment case that has sort of been associated with ERA has been the kind of call option that maybe one day Jabiluka gets developed.
Yeah, I mean that is the perfect way to describe why the share price movement has been so weird in the last couple of days, is because the company is essentially owned by three groups. You got Rio Tinto at 86.3%, you've got Packer & Co. at 9.3%, and then you've got Zentree owning much of the remainder, and then there is a long tail of individuals that own anywhere from 1 to, a few hundred, a few thousand shares out there.
Yeah.
But the far and away, there is no free float because it is almost entirely owned by those three groups. And you see the share price up 10% today, which is just bizarre. But again, the volume is next to nothing.
And that's what I think it's 1.4% or something. The minority shareholders.
I think you're around about right.
As you said, not all of that is free float because you got a lot of people with negligible parcels.
Yeah.
Unsaleable parcels as well, no doubt. 700 odd mil market cap.
Yeah. 700. It's a funny
one. So
one.
the interesting thing is where it was heading before this announcement by the NT and federal government is that Rio could have done another entitlement offer, and if Packer & Co., Zentree, and obviously all the minorities didn't take enough of the entitlement up, they could have got over 90% via an entitlement offer, which would have given them compulsory acquisition of ERA.
Would have been the first takeover on the ASX and still might be via entitlements.
Entitlement, correct. Yeah.
It's a wild one. And it leads to, one of the aspects that we should chat about, the corporate governance here, the treatment of minority shareholders. I mean, this is for a long time now been run as a Rio Tinto business with that enormous shareholding in there. There's been what seems very much like from the outside a lack of independence. I mean, we've heard about ERA employees having Rio Tinto in their emails. You can see just by looking at the boards and previous board members, the strong association. So many of them have worked at Rio Tinto for a long time, and that's been a ongoing theme. And obviously, as a big shareholder, they are almost they're 86% owners of the business, so they should have a say in how it's run. But that should not ignore the interests of the minority shareholder groups there.
And the independent directors that are on the board now they're not from a mining background. They're so Ken Wyatt, he's a politician, represents a lot of Indigenous work in Parliament, and I think the other guys are bloody Ernst & Young for years. Yeah. So nothing to do with mining. So
and it leads to sort of debates when you get things like takeover offers coming in there. There was a takeover offer in 2019 that was reported by the takeovers panel, and this was pushed away by Rio Tinto. And you sort of ask the question, are they acting in the interests of Rio Tinto, or is that being done in the interest of ERA and ERA shareholders? And it's a sort of hard question to answer. But I mean, it kind of leads into what you said, Trav, in the investment case. Why shareholders would buy in, why anyone would buy into a company with a rehabilitation liability that had been steadily growing over time despite money being invested to rehabilitate the land. And Jabiluka was that option. That's now no longer the option. And the company said just a couple of months ago that they're going to run out of money in the next couple of months. And they've still got, the bill is $2.3-ish billion to be spent. So
yeah, I don't think
in total, hey? Total, yeah.
I believe so, yeah.
I don't think anyone's base case was that, Jabiluka is going to be developed anytime soon. And in a price segment, I even called ERE an uninvestable stock at one point for the fact that you've got that rehab liability there. And if you took an outlook that Jabiluka could never be developed, it's just the fact that now...
And you got no power.
Yeah.
Because Rio's all the power. Yeah.
And there's now this completely kind of... Well, you've gone from a call option that maybe one day you could have regime change and Jabiluka could be developed to now that's off the table.
Yeah. But the interesting thing is like now that they've given up that veto right, that the Mirror people now do not have the veto right with ERA because the lease hasn't been renewed. So that's been voided effectively. So I'm uncertain as to what rights Mirror people will have in the future if the government...
If this gets classified as a national park, like it's a very long and arduous process to ever have that reclassified.
Yeah, but I wonder if that's going to happen before the election, before the Liberal government gets in.
It sounds like that was taking victory laps and everything already. So, I don't know. I'd be interested in it.
It is fascinating to see the response from companies. So Rio Tinto coming out via a spokesperson saying they are pleased to see the wishes of the native title holders respected and to see that the lease has been extinguished. And obviously you've got ERA saying that they're disappointed in assessing options, even though there's that, major interest in there that they kind of have to say that because they need to look after their shareholders.
That was the the part for me was like, and I tweeted about this, was sort of seeing the headlines out about, win for the Mirror people. And I kind of just put the question out there on Twitter, like, is it really a win for the Mirror people? What's kind of, what are the circumstances that have led to this? Who's influenced their perspectives over time? Like who advises them? The Mirror people, there's we understand there's like less than 40 Mirror people today. That their advisors over time have done as much as fly the Japanese Prime Minister to their land to tell them how it was uranium from Fukushima, uranium from Ranger that was responsible for Fukushima. It's also like part of Mirror culture in relation to their land that talks about disturbance to the land and how it causes sickness if the land is disturbed. So there's kind of this, you can see a modern day story tie in with an olden day story and how that could impact their culture and views. But I don't have those same people kind of also talked about the huge environmental benefits that come from nuclear power. The huge kind of even like if you want to go deep on it, like the lives saved on an incremental basis as a result of lack of coal pollution, all that sort of stuff. Like you could do there's a lot of analysis that points to tremendous human benefit. I just think the bigger question to think here is it really a win for the Mirror people, or have they not been allowed to maybe even think for themselves? There's a 4% royalty on Jabiluka that goes to be paid to the Aboriginal Benefits Association, I think it is, which is on an Aboriginal's benefits account, which is just like account set up to obviously benefit the Aboriginal people. That's worth billions of dollars over decades of mining.
I think it works out about $100 million a year if it's in production, around about.
It could be. Who knows what the development scenario could be? And but I reckon that thing's worth billions. Yeah, and then
billions over the life of mine. Fucking totally unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's I think there's open-ended questions there. I don't think it's as clean cut as sort of saying this is a win for the TOs. I think I'd love to know what they think out of their voices and their mouths, with all of the information rather than the representatives of them think.
I'd love to go there and talk to them. I reckon that'd be a very empowering experience. But because I would assume the Mirror people are still have royalties remaining from the Ranger days. I'm not sure how much that is. And you also got to think about the town of Jabiru as well, which was dependent on this, which is I hear is suffering because there's no activity there now. So a lot at play. It's a very sensitive topic.
Yeah, the points you guys raised.
We're navigating it well, I think.
the points you guys raised are really interesting. Obviously, it's a super complex topic that's very hard for us three here chatting about to fully understand. This has been going on for a long time. I mean, on the surface, you've kind of got to say that at least what we've been hearing from the likes of Yvonne and other Mirarr people is that what they have sort of requested for a long time now has been heard, despite a lot of people telling them that there'd be financial benefits and highlighting that the Northern Territory as a state is in a difficult spot. But here we sort of are. So
to be clear, none of us think it's appropriate to mine in opposition to First Nations people. That's like
absolutely.
Yeah, I think like a consideration for our whole industry, like looking into the future, is high quality resources that we need are getting like scarcer and more expensive, and like as a whole, we just need better ways of partnering with First Nations people across the globe. That create mutual benefit for everyone. That reflect like shared priorities across cultures.
Yeah, I think that's a really good time to. There's two more topics I want to talk about on this one, and that is mineral development. Like you said, Trav, across the Western world, this is a really big one, and obviously Jabiluka has a long history. It's got to be up there with the most well-known mineral deposits that haven't been mined in Australia. Sort of full stop.
And it's funny when you talk about Australia being the highest uranium resources in the world. You've got a big chunk of it's here, and another big chunk is in Olympic Dam, which is going to be mined forever.
Yeah,
I think that's a bit skewed for when Australia's got all this uranium, because most of it's contained in these two.
Yeah, I hear you on that point. And there's other projects up there that won't get mined.
Coronation Hill, you should deep dive on that one day.
Where's that?
It's also in Kakadu. The government at the time in the 90s basically, put a line through ever mining that by making it part of Kakadu National Park. But mate, like for example, gold was a byproduct in that deposit. Byproduct grading 10 grams per tonne.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So I mean, if there was a perfect solution with all the minerals and everything we needed on an island that no human had ever lived on, and there's no biodiversity and anything like that, it'd be perfect. But that's obviously not realistic. And in the meanwhile, places like Indonesia and other sort of developing countries just go full bore ahead. So something we in the West need to face up with. And the last point of debate on this one is a really interesting one with a company we've spoken a bunch about lately, Boss Energy. Now, it was confirmed that they'd come in and offered $550 million to buy Jabiluka. That would involve a 10% free carried interest post the recovery of capital to a Northern Territory-focused Indigenous foundation. ERA received written notice yesterday that obviously Boss has pulled this offer, so it's no longer in action. But, geez, what does that tell us about Boss?
Well, but what does it tell about what was going on with ERA? Like, there's obvious people were wanting to buy it, and I would assume that Boss weren't the only one.
Yeah,
I'm sure your Kamikos and that were trying to figure out a way in there as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
The challenge is like Rio Tinto, more than any other major miner, is under tremendous pressure to not be seen to be doing anything that's against the wishes of First Nations people in the aftermath of Juukan Gorge.
Yeah.
And selling the asset would have been contrary to that perception. They would never sell it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that.
They don't want to kill the golden goose. So
Yeah. Good option to have up your sleeve,
Yeah.
but if it's not. But wouldn't, and the article came out about the Boss bid, and it was going to be all scrip as well.
Makes sense.
So imagine what the share price would have been after that. Maybe short term, but you would imagine, I know you can't, there wouldn't be approvals in place and everything, but to do a deal that big, like over $500 million, you would have to have a pretty good, and they were talking about giving a 10% free carried interest to the Mirarr people for this, but you'd have to have some sort of confidence that there would be a potential future in it. You wouldn't just lob it in the current state it was in. I wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
This is an asset that Rio Tinto carries on the books at $90 million, or ERA does, whatever. It's worth way more than that. Let's be real.
Yeah.
It's but the big thing, that your huge sensitivity in that analysis is probability of being mined and when it gets mined. And those are anyone's guess. But heck, if development started next year, this thing's worth what?
Oh, I think
It's $10 billion or something.
yeah, I think in a spike of uranium price, I think it's like
Yeah,
it's
crazy.
fucking probably $1 billion
Like,
free cash a year or something,
it's
wouldn't it be?
It's a freaky,
half a bill to a bill.
freaky deposit. So yeah, it's anyone's guess what that probability of ever being mined is or whatever. The script sort of offer from Boss is interesting. I don't think it's like anything different to what their articulated strategy has been, which is, hungry for M&A, hungry to buy stuff. And when you look at the implied value, the implied uranium price on this, when you back it out of just the models on their deposit, it makes sense that they'd want to use their script to buy stuff now.
Do you think that if something was to ever happen with a company for Jabiluka, it would have to be a smaller company rather than the big Rio Tinto?
I totally believe that you have natural advantages to proper long-term relationships with traditional owners when you're smaller, you're leaner, you're nimbler, and you've got a more long-term outlook together, as opposed to a large company where you've got rotating senior management all the time, different strategic objectives, no kind of long-termism to those relationships. That's my personal view. I'm not saying Boss is the right company to do that. I'm just sort of saying in general that's how I would think about that sort of stuff.
It's much easier for the MD to go and talk directly to the people, whereas you wouldn't see the head of Rio like this. So it'd have its own division.
Yeah, and if you think of an example's pretty sure like WA1, that discovery is a story of the ability. I think it was a native title agreement of some description that opened up the floodgates for that area to be explored. Now, BHP and Rio had lots of exploration interest in that region for a long time, but guess who got the landmark native title agreement? Agreement. So it says a lot about what kind of company can actually have the relationships, the longevity, and all that sort of stuff to open up these sorts of possibilities.
I think, Boss, it looks like they're not afraid to go big long term, because if this did happen, that's a pretty long term bet. That could be it could have been a decade to start mining that, to go through like an approval process to get that happening. So it's very interesting. Yeah, very interesting. That would have been a growth story and a half.
Sure would have been.
Like a bloody North American, like a Saskatchewan project in Northern Territory, pretty much. Yeah, Boss on the lookout, eh?
I think they are. On the topic of M&A, some rumours at the big end of town as well.
JD, I got a rumour for you before you get into your one. I love a good rumour.
Tell me, mate.
Rumour is VRIFY are going to be at Diggers.
Oh, that's some good word on the decline.
The team are going to be at Diggers. Word on the decline, and this is probably true.
I think it's very true. Yeah, they would be at Diggers because there's not that they need to search for the companies. The company's going to be searching for them.
Yeah, I think they're actually putting their AI to use, and they're probably going to go over the delegate register and give them it's going to give them like a set of people that are the most probable success for a client.
Well,
they're applying the exploration AI to exploring customers.
It
could do anything.
Diggers and dealers, and if you're if you're in a you got a project and you want to be a digger, well, you're going to need VRIFY AI.
Don't just rely on being
if you
want to
be a dealer, well, mate, you kind of also need VRIFY to communicate your project. So
given our 100% success rate with Word on the Decline, I think there's very good chances they'll be there.
Yeah, and pretty much everyone that won an award at Diggers and Dealers last year were all a VRIFY user. So if you want to win an award, you have to be a VRIFY customer effectively. That is true.
Don't reduce VRIFY to that level, mate. Those who know.
Been a real friend of the show, win an award.
Yes, that wasn't true. Just give us a buzz if you want to get in touch with them. We'll hook you up. VRIFY AI.
Go VRIFY.
Now, JD, what was your rumour? Sorry to interrupt.
Trav, I won't steal your thunder here. Teck
I love when Matty will like read a headline, just assume, oh, this is a JD type of story.
This is a Trav type
Oh,
of
no,
story.
I knew it was you. I forgot about that. Yeah.
So look, there was another Friday and another rumor about the big end of town in the M&A world coming from Bloomberg, and they're talking about Teck, the big bloody copper miner Teck. So, like I want to go into it, and you know. Would you look at the list of companies dropped in the conversation there inside this Bloomberg article? It's all about, Teck being a target, but they list Anglo American, Vale Base Metals, BHP, Rio Tinto, Freeport, Glencore. I mean, have we missed any at all? I don't think so. So I reckon this is worth talking about. And in a nutshell, the article talks up the prospect of a few different deal scenarios with Teck. Keep in mind that earlier this month, Teck's divestment of its phenomenal Elk Valley Resources coke and coal business to Glencore completed, leaving Teck, largely a pure play kind of copper company, but there's a bit of zinc and stuff in there too. So kind of base metals, but definitely copper dominant, good copper growth projects, etc. It's what that company looks like now, and it doesn't have that overhang of that dirty coal, mate. So the scenarios rattled off by Bloomberg are, firstly, the Teck is a logical partner for Vale's base metals business. Secondly, Anglo American thinks Teck is a better cultural fit to partner with than a major like BHP. Thirdly, both BHP and Rio Tinto are keeping tabs on Teck. Fourth, Freeport is keeping a close watch on Teck. And fifth, Glencore has a standstill with Teck that lapses if another party makes a bid for the company, so they could get involved afterwards.
I can see where this is going. 100%. I know exactly what you're about to say. Continue.
I love that you know me that well already. Now look at what this article actually did to Teck's share price as well. So keep in mind that it's a very liquid stock with a US $25 billion market cap, and the words from these journos at Bloomberg sent the stock as much as 5% higher, and look, even compared to the other companies in the story, which were pretty neutral, which is it's pretty wild. And look, it's a fascinating article, and I think it's one of those articles where it's less about the scenarios that the article suggests, and it's more about the read through of why this article has surfaced in the first place.
Bingo.
And to kind of unpack that, I think it's always important to look at the reporters listed in the byline and try and introduce their source from previous coverage. In this case, we've got Jacob Lorink, Mariana Durao, Dinesh Nair, and Thomas Bicheval. So let's look at previous coverage from Jacob Lorink. 18 months ago, in February 2023, he published, Teck's sweeping overhaul may make it a target for larger miners. This was, February 2023. Keep in mind, back then in February 2023, Teck was sort of on the hunting block by Glencore, who hadn't yet launched their hostile kind of bid for Teck, but their wheels were certainly in motion. So Teck had every incentive to make sure their share price was as high as it could possibly be back then. I reckon that story by Jacob 18 months ago is a plant by Teck. And look, BHP and Rio get a name drop in that article too, of course. And look, a week earlier, 3 of the authors on the recent Bloomberg article that I first mentioned were the ones to have the scoop on the fact that Teck planned to spin off its Elk Valley resource business in the first place before the company had actually formally announced that intention themselves. You've got right there in the byline, Thomas Bicheval, Dinesh Nair, and Jacob Lorink. That's all to say I think Teck planted the story. And I think they've planted stories with the same Bloomberg reporters in the past. And when you come to terms with that probability, the logical question to ask is why would they have planned this recent story about all these companies being interested in Teck?
No one's going to read news anymore.
Well, it's not as if you don't learn. You still learn. It's just not exactly what you're reading, right?
You're just like, don't worry about what this is. Don't look over here.
It's always the read-through with M&A rumours, Matty. And so there's a couple of possibilities. Like, why would this recent article be planted? I think, first possibility is Teck's frustrated that, the EVR deal, the divestment of that coal is completed now. They still haven't re-rated, but they're not burdened by that dirty coal portfolio. So, they're just frustrated. They want to get, appropriately valued. So they're telling the world that they're a target. That's entirely possible. Personally, I do think they'll regret selling that business for the price they sold it for in the long run, especially to chase a re-rate, which I just kind of don't believe in the merit of chasing personally.
And it hasn't happened.
Sort of. I mean, they are up a good chunk year to date, but most copper companies are. Yeah, and yeah, let's see. The time will tell on that one.
To put a bit of colour for those kind of curious, they're trading on 6 times 2024 earnings and sort of low 6.3 times 25 earnings.
Yeah, and which is they trade on a bit higher multiple over there than over here, don't they?
Well, it's probably still like. Remember Freeport's got the best fucking multiple in the world. So it's like everyone wants Freeport's multiple, which is like 10 times. Anyway, now the other possibility is that they're testing the waters publicly on the merit of doing a deal themselves. Now, remember the first two things the article talks about were acquiring Vale's base metals business or merging with Anglo American. They were kind of the partners that they were talking about. And given the medium term kind of challenges ever actually acquiring what's like left of Teck, its copper business and all that sort of stuff, due to remember a few weeks ago we were talking about the Canadian government protecting its national champions, especially the critical minerals ones, right? And I think, that looks pretty damn challenging. So as a result, I think this second possibility is the highest probability scenario of what's really going on. I reckon the most likely thing here is Teck's planted this story to just get some feedback from the market, from its shareholders, but they're most likely weighing up the tie up with Vale's base metals business in the near term would be my read. And remember, of all the deals, this one has the most likely probability of actually completing in the near term because you create a larger kind of Canadian champion as a result of the tie-up with Vale's base metals business. The context for Vale's base metals business is that Vale introduced the Saudis as a 10% shareholder, I think over a year ago, and that was kind of a precursor to them kind of divesting that either by IPO or it could just be. You could skip the IPO stage. You might actually just get, the integration with Teck before that. So that's kind of been talked about publicly in a few different forums, and I sort of see that as the most logical long-term tie-up of all of the rumours that were shrummed up. And I just think getting a deal done from one of the majors, given Canada's current government dynamic, looks tough.
I think you're spot on. They've actually recently just put in a new CEO from the old Triple Flags CEO to lead the Vale base metals unit. Obviously, you got a high pedigree chairman there as well, and it's sort of interesting to see, where the political balance lies with that asset sale Elk Valley. The Conservatives, they were saying that the current, progressive government should not have even allowed that sale of Elk Valley. So it's not as if they were having a much more open stance on that particular point of view, which just goes to option 2 being much more likely, as you kind of highlighted.
Totally. Whether it's Vale's base metals business or another acquisition in mind, I'm not sure. But I look at Jonathan as CEO. He doesn't want to give up his job, and he's got both the Canadian government and Norman Keevil to protect him. And they're going to do it. They're going to try and do like an acquisition type of deals where Teck is the surviving entity would be my read, and everything else kind of put a line through for now because you just can't. You won't be able to get those deals done.
Yeah. This is a bit out there. Like, do you think one of the big reasons that Teck sold Elk Valley to Glencore, which you said they sold it bloody cheap, do you think they just weren't really comfortable with the risk of, on the back of, coal experts, CRE insurance not having any policies in place?
That's 100% true. Yeah, there was a long history that went into them divesting that one. Now it's in Glencore's hands. Glencore know the right thing to do, and they beat Colin CRE.
Yeah,
because Glencore have that experience in Australia. They know the guys at CRE. They know they're the best in the field. They can just get them over there to Canada, get it sorted, and the cash will just print itself.
Yeah, so there is a bit of merit to it, probably.
I think you're right.
It's just unbelievable how such like a boutique insurance firm in Australia can have such influence on a deal like this. Like, talk about, like, they don't need to plan stories or anything. Like, it's just either they're there or they're not there. That is your determining factor on whether deals get done or not in the coal industry and probably the mining industry going forward. So,
Matty, when I learnt how much stress CRE could take away just in one phone call, changed my life.
Yeah,
changed my life.
God, look how much money it's cost Teck by giving it away cheap because they didn't have CRE. So, look, protect your bloody shareholder returns and get CRE insurance. Like, yeah, I wish I told Teck that a while ago.
They do insure things other than shareholder returns. They insure, business interruption at your mine. They insure, bloody property damage at your mine. Big
weather
ticket
events,
items.
Which gives you more shareholder returns.
Yeah. Anglo wishes they used them.
Anyway, very good. Ramelius last off. Quarterly out today. All bloody pre-quarterly anyway, but a bit more context today. I'll rip through them.
They're up though, mate. So there must have been a positive surprise there.
They're up,
I suppose
mate.
old gold. So
It's one of those companies that's like, look, we know you're making heaps of cash. What's going on with Spartan? Anyway, 293,000 ounces, all in sustaining cost, 1,583. 82, so that was for the whole financial year. 82,000 ounces for the quarter, all in sustaining cost, 1,362. So remember, they're just pretty much essentially processing at Edna May. So she's nice and processing stockpiles, nice and cheap and easy. But
Harvesting.
all in sustaining costs for Mount Magnet reported at 982 an ounce. So obviously a good little kicker on the grade there. So finished with cash and gold, 446 million. Underlying free cash flow for the quarter, 137 million. Jesus, that's a lot of money. That is a lot of money to pump out in 3 months. Well done.
Guidance, Matt. They gave guidance in a separate announcement as well for FY25.
270 to 300,000 ounces for the year, at all in sustaining of 15 to 17 for FY25. But remember, during the quarter, Ramelius purchased their 18% stake in Spartan. So I think that's already up about 50, 60 million bucks or something.
I think I had read that somewhere.
Yeah. So, and they also entered into a syndicated facility agreement for a revolving corporate facility for $175 for a 4-year term, replacing an old 100 million one. Just to give them a bit more firepower.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
What could that be used for?
So you look at the chart here, you see how much the ounces that Mount Magnet pumped out. So considerably higher than the previous quarters. So, just ticking it along, doing Ramelius things. But the quarterly call. One question we have to play. And a couple of responses from the main man, Mr. Mark Zepner. Here we go.
The next question comes from Adrian Rousso from the West Australian. Please go ahead.
Oh, hi, Mark and Darren. Simon Lawson believes that Ramelius likely doesn't have the firepower anymore to take Spartan out. I mean, do you agree with that? And if not Spartan, where will the immediate growth come from in the business?
Thanks, Adrian. I won't comment on other people's opinion of our firepower. So we have a number of internal growth projects over and above M&A options, and we can debate how much firepower we have available to throw at those.
Good footy there from Adrian Rousso, directing the subscribers to the West Australian. Straight bat as always from Zeppy. Loved it.
Hard at the ball. I like it.
Loved it. Oh, that was bloody brilliant. We'll have to get... I'm always so tempted to go in and ask a question, but nah. What would have you asked? There's nothing you can ask that they're going to tell you anything that... I'd rather just talk about it myself and make stuff up. Wouldn't want to put him in the position.
Give him some unsolicited advice.
No point saying, now Bellevue's so bloody cheap. Are you looking at buying them too?
That'd have been a cheeky one.
Down bloody dollar in the $1.30s today, old bloody Bellevue. Wonder if they're on the runs. Might be on the table for anyone. Their market cap's getting close to Spartans.
Yeah.
I think Bellevue was 1.5 this morning, I think. Spartan about 1.3.
Why would you want to build a mine, Matty?
It's easier talking about them.
Way easier.
Yeah.
So much easier. Just talk about how good I was back in the day. The washed up has been.
Do you know who's freaking very good right now? Not back in the day.
Right now, you're saying, JD?
Access mining technology.
Yeah, I think they've always been. They were good back in the day too.
Back in the day, today,
tomorrow,
for the rest of the time.
Into the future. Buddy, I can't see anyone on this list that isn't good. Mineral mining services.
Check.
VRIFY. GetWet Solutions.
Yep.
DSI Underground, that goes without saying. Silverstone, holy snapping duck shit, they're good. We've just shown how good CRE insurance are, pretty much bloody can influence billions of dollars worth on a deal. Jero James at WA Waterbores, he's good. K-Drill, pretty much run the goldfields.
Yep.
That's pretty good. Spark, good charts.
Checks all
Good
round.
animations. Bloody, yeah. Hooteroo, Money Miners, just be good.
Good footy.
Hooteroo.
Oh, mate, on Hooteroo, I got a text message from a bloody friend of the show.
We're back.
And this text message said that there was a presenter on Triple J that signed off with Hooteroo. And they said, you might want to explore copyright infringement.
Didn't we get that trademarked? No, was it Hooteroo? No, we're Director's Special. Have we trademarked Hooteroo yet?
Oh, I don't know. Anyway, we'll claim
Better
it.
get onto that.
Try not to float the ideas we're trying to front run us. Hooteroo.
The information contained in this episode of Money of Mine is of general nature only and does not take into account the objectives, financial situation or needs of any particular person. Before making any investment decision, you should consult with your financial advisor and consider how appropriate the advice is to your objectives, financial situation and needs.